Okay, I think we are live. Let me get Instagram going as well. I think we are live now as well. I'm going to get this to the full screen. So we got our Instagram folks joining us. I'm going to be monitoring the Facebook questions that come in. We're going to start in just a minute here. We got, hey, Paulson. All right. And that's Cohen. Is that Cohen's dad? We had an awesome training video from at home the other day.
Yeah, what a setup.
Yeah. Yeah, Chris, we got Louis Macias on. It's awesome. So we're going to get started any second now. I'm just going to get the Facebook up too so I can take questions. I'll be doing my best to monitor both Instagram live questions as well as the Facebook questions that come in online. I'll be monitoring that. And bear with me. I got my kids watching Moana in the background as well, so hopefully they're not too loud. But we're gonna give this a go to do a live almost every day of the week. We got our director of hockey operations, Paul, our chief of hockey operations, Paul Esdale, on the line here, and we're going to be doing a live today about what it takes to become an elite defenseman. So we're going to get fully started in 1 minute here. I'm just making sure everything is working and that we got everyone on here, and we'll continue to people come on. And then if you have questions, type them in and I can moderate that and get them answered. But even if you're watching on the replay, even if you're watching live or you're behind on it, type in your questions and we'll be sure to get to them, as well as follow up with them and maybe do future lives answering those questions in the future. So if you can see it on Facebook, let me know too, because I don't quite see it yet on there. So Joyce, let me know if you're on Facebook. I think it's on. I think we're on. I know I see us on Instagram here. We have Stephen Macias joined us now too. Awesome. That's great. This will be great for you, Stephen. Let us know your questions. Even if you're a forward, there's going to be some great stuff that Paul's going to be able to share with us here. Oh, there we go. I got it here. Okay, we are live on Facebook. Let me turn this down. Let us know your questions. We're still learning tech and stuff, guys. So bear with us. And then type in if you're on the Facebook as well, so I can see those questions. So again, we are live on Facebook. Thanks, Joyce. She's on. Okay. Great. So we have Paul here, our chief of hockey with the Junior Reign. Paul is a former NCAA Division I All-Star at Brown University as a defenseman there, played junior hockey before that, went on to play professional hockey in several leagues, including Europe and the United States. Actually played a little bit with the Ducks AHL team as well right out of college. So has played at some of the highest levels of hockey you can play at as a defenseman. But then also went on to have several years of coaching, even at the highest levels of junior A hockey, as a coach and general manager in the BCHL. Has sent a lot of players on to collegiate hockey from there as well, and other players that have now turned professional. So Paul has a unique perspective as a defenseman coming up, playing at the highest levels. And from a dad, with a dad that was a career coach, so learning a lot of things. Paul being an undersized defenseman at the time, it was a different time then with being a defenseman, and learning a lot of things from his dad as a career professional and collegiate coach, becoming a collegiate player, having tremendous success at college, moving on to become a pro player, and then becoming a coach, coaching kids all the way from 4 years old all the way up through junior A hockey, kids moving on to college and pro hockey. So a lot of things to share with us. Welcome, Paul, and thanks for joining and making time for everyone today.
Hey, Ben, appreciate the time, and thanks for that introduction. You missed out the roller hockey experiences too. So that's I know that's close to your heart as well, and that's another great tool for people to do use roller hockey.
Yeah, right, exactly. Paul is also a defenseman on the Team Canada national team in roller hockey, which and I had an opportunity to coach him in that, which was pretty cool too. So Paul, first, maybe share with us a little bit about your experience, growing up in Canada, playing at a high level. You have some experiences that I think really helpful to young players too, especially like I said, being a smaller player growing up, going through the adversities of, going into AAA and junior hockey as you got older, going through the doubters and all the things, and kind of working through that towards success, really beyond what, there's only a certain percentage that make it to the highest levels of junior hockey and collegiate hockey. And a lot of times it's the players that have to fight through some things. And it's not always the ones that all the people expect because they're the big, strong kid when they're younger or whatever. And you fought through some stuff and ended up coming out on the other side really successful. Maybe share some of that experience with the community.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Yeah, it was a long path, and I think that's the number one kind of lesson that I learned throughout this all was that everyone has a different path and different unique path, and you can't really plan it. You can have a kind of a overall goal of where you're trying to go, but sometimes it doesn't go exactly as planned, so you have to adjust and pivot. And I think for myself, growing up in Edmonton, Alberta, watching the Edmonton Oilers win the cup in the 80s. And then being around when my dad was coaching at University of Alberta, so watching Canadian University hockey, I was around the rinks a lot, even going into the dressing rooms, and that really kind of sparked that passion and love for the game, just being around it and really being immersed in it. So I had that kind of it was an advantage for me, but everyone else in Edmonton and Canada is that culture, right? So that was kind of the thing that everyone focused on was hockey all the time. Right. So it was that was the challenge, right? It was a big market of hockey players, and everyone wanted to play college and professional, not just me. Right. So that was the challenge. You're competing against so many different players. And I grew up as a smaller player, and I was always one of the smaller, kind of shorter players on the team. And there was a point in time when that was 8U, 10U, even 12U, that was kind of okay. But then once I kind of graduated to the next level of like body checking and that kind of stuff, that was when the doubters start to come out. And I was cut from a team, and at 15 I was cut at 16 under at 15. I was cut from a team and told I wasn't good enough to play, and I never play at a high level of hockey from a coach. And that I've talked about this before, and that actually helped me, believe it or not. That actually drove me and it fueled that passion to prove people wrong. And, I did a thank you hockey piece a while ago, last year, I think, and I was actually thanking that coach for telling me I was never going to make it. And it's that drive and that passion and that will to persevere against all odds. And I think that's actually helped me. And it's not easy. And there was definitely times when I, almost, quit hockey and those kind of things. And I remember all those times. But going through it now, looking back, it's don't let anyone ever tell you you're not good enough. And if you put in the work and you have the belief, it's amazing where you can take your abilities.
Great, and so at the time when you're told you're a midget AAA hockey player or whatever, and you're told you're too small and you're never going to play. How did you decide what's happening in your mind that you're going to keep at this and you're going to look for another opportunity or another solution? Did your dad help you with that? And like, how did you take that next step?
Yeah. So the unique thing about my upbringing and a lot of things that we don't talk about at high level players, a lot of players are multi-sport athletes, right? So I played tennis and hockey. And I did some roller hockey when I could as well. So I was actually 3 different sports. And when I was cut from my midget team, there definitely was a time when I was going to hang up the skates and go full on into tennis and play tennis competitively my whole and just put that as my focus. And I did that during the summer months. I would skate like once a week, but then I'd play tennis kind of full on, and then I'd switch back and forth. But I think obviously my dad being a career hockey coach and giving me guidance on, hey, like that's one guy and one guy's opinion. And there's a lot of people out there, and there's a lot of hockey left in you if you put in the work. And I think that was one reason why continue on for sure is that guidance. And the other one was the love for the game. You know, I grew up walking, you know, to school in the snow and then going to the outdoor rink and playing 8-10 hours a day at the outdoor rink. And I even had a rink a little rink in the back of my backyard as well. So if I didn't want, you know, if it wasn't going to walk to the school for that day, I could skate in the backyard as well. So it was really that passion, that love that drove it as well. So I think those two ingredients with the guidance from someone that's been there, and my dad coached hockey. Obviously, he's had to cut players before in the past, and he's had to, you know, direct people in different directions for their players and their future. And that love, I think, that's what drove me to fight through it and kind of give it another shot. And I ended up getting on with actually a junior A team, believe it or not, as a 15-year-old, and ended up just practicing with them for the season. And I ended up playing about 10 games. And that kind of set me up for my path after that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because that the statistics say like that age group is a lot of times where kids give up on a sport or quit. And it's, you know, you can imagine your life, how different your life would be if you just would have quit hockey at that situation, not having that collegiate experience, not having this experience going across in Europe and playing pro and then doing what you do for a career now. And you see kids that get discouraged and maybe don't have that mentor or whoever that's, you know, helping them stay with it or keeping that love for the game, that give up maybe too early because it looks like maybe things aren't going to work out. Someone told them they're not good enough or whatever. And, you know, you're willing to just basically say you're going to practice for a season and stay with it. You didn't have any guarantees of games or anything like that at that point, but stick with it. And I know you're glad that you did, and it led to opportunities that maybe you couldn't have imagined at the time were going to happen. You know, we end up going to Brown and playing there, and then becoming a leader on that team and becoming an all-star in college. Maybe share with us, like you teach defenseman class with the junior A and coach a lot of the players, but maybe share with us some real practical things that actually at first will help any position, you know, for the things that you needed to learn at junior hockey, that how do I take the next step? How do I get to the next level? I want to play college and pro hockey. What are some of the things, and you were fortunate to have your dad who coached at the pro level to maybe share some, because a lot of times it's the little stuff. It's not just the stats, right? It's not just the big kind of highlight reel stuff. What are the things that you learned that help you take those next steps to the next level? And then maybe after that, we can get into some real specific position stuff with D.
Sure. Yeah, I think number one is it's got to be fun, right? You got to have a passion and enjoyment of the game. I think that's really critical. And you got to really love the game. So you got to go all in and take advantage of your opportunities. I think for me, it was the outdoor rink. It was the my neighbors had a little gymnasium. The Comries had a gymnasium in their gym. We played roller hockey every day. So it's those things that I had at my disposal that kept me going. So it was that passion, that love, making it fun for sure. Those were critical. And then it was taking advantage of all the opportunities in the practice time, right? Like every time you step on the ice is an opportunity to get better. And I think that's something that sometimes we can take for granted. I know I even did at times, but I would recenter my mindset on, hey, like today I want to get better. And if we can get better today, I can work harder than everyone else, I'm going to be better for the next day. And I think that kind of mindset of trying to be the best player on the ice is important. I think I was talking to you earlier about, you know, making small little goals. Like for example, in practice, when I became, started to play junior, then college hockey, my goals in practice were to make 100% of my passes. So no matter what, I would make 100% of my passes. And the other part of that was never throw the puck away, right? So not just throw it away off the glass and get it out, because the reality is that's easy to do. And learning how to dump the puck in is very simple. So let's not practice that. Sure, in a game, if the situation deems it necessary that I got to chip the puck in or get it off the glass or high out in the middle of the ice, sure, I can do it then. But let's not practice things that I've already had the skill sets for. So I would practice hanging on the puck more, trying to make plays, trying to be creative, having that fearless kind of attitude to not worry about making mistakes. So those are some of the things. I think when I played games, the focus was on a very simple goal. And I've told this to other people before, is trying to get 3 shots a period. So that if you get 3 shots a period as a defenseman, that's 9 shots in a game. That's a pretty good game. You're bound to create offense that way. And I was an offensive defenseman. So I was looking to try to make an impact on every play of the game. And that's something I learned as I went through playing junior and then college and professional, was I had to learn how to pick my spots. So every play couldn't be a home run pass. Every play wasn't going to create a scoring opportunity. And I had to learn how to pick my spots a little bit better. But I think that was my mentality, was I'm going to be the best player on the ice and I'm going to make something happen. I'm going to create offense, and I'm going to take care of my defensive zone. I'm going to play good defense. I'm going to play competitive defense. I'm going to have good stick position. I'm going to use my body where it's needed. But I'm going to spend as little time in my end as possible, because if we have the puck, they can't score. And that was kind of some of the things I learned along the way.
Yeah, so really just focusing on being that impact player every single time you touch the ice, right? Whether it's practice or a game, and having an impact and not taking anything for granted, right? Anytime you have that opportunity. What about, maybe talk a little bit about how the game has changed and how it's evolving, especially for defensemen, and maybe talk about some of the skills and things you've already kind of alluded to, not throwing the puck away, becoming a part of the offense and stuff. Maybe just talk about where the game is going and some of the skills that you teach in the smaller group settings too.
Yeah, I think the game is it's changing, right? I think it's changed big time the last couple of years, last 5-10 years, it's really changed. And the game, it's a speed game now. We all see that, we all know that. So you have to be able to skate, and you have to be able to compete, and you have to be able to think the game. Like, if you can skate and you can compete and you can think, you're probably going to be able to play at the next level, because you can always improve on the shooting, the stick handling, those kind of things. But how do you improve skating? Well, yeah, you got to practice skating. You got to technically be sound, and you got to put in the work. How do you work on competing? You have to have little skills and tips on how to use your stick, how to use your body, but you got to practice competing. You have to battle, you have to compete, and you have to understand the game. So you have to be put in situations where you have to make decisions. And really, that's what it comes down to, is good decision making. And you're not going to make great decisions all the time, but the more decisions you make, the better you'll get at it, right? So I think the game's going where, as a defenseman, it's at some point here, it's not, you may not even be called a defenseman anymore. You're just a player, because the positions are, you line up at a face-off as a defenseman, but as you're seeing now, defensemen are up in the play, they're joining the rush, they're leading the rush, and they're playing defense a lot different. In your end, you're really you're outnumbering all the time. If you watch the NHL teams, all they're trying to do is shrink the ice, have 5 guys down low below the top of the circles, and outnumber to get the puck. And as soon as they get the puck, they're either getting it up and out into the neutral zone, or making quick little support passes to get on offense as quick as possible. So it's changing that there's not as many, obviously, huge body checks anymore. There's still contact and it's still physical, and that's always going to be part of the game. But you don't need, your whole team doesn't need to be 6'6" defensemen now. They can be 5'10" skilled players that can handle the puck and make plays. And I think that's where we're going. And you don't have to always be like, it's not always just skate backwards and play guys straight up one-on-one. A lot of times you're just taking away their time and space, getting in their space, getting a stick on the puck, and you're skating with them. You're skating forward. So it's changed where you're skating forward more, and you're more active. You're more as an all-around player. And when I went over to Europe, I really saw that. Like, I remember one time I was playing in Sweden, and I dumped the puck in. And you should have seen what the players looked at me and yelled at me, something in Swedish that I didn't understand. And I wasn't a guy who dumped the puck in a lot, but I think I was tired or something. I wanted to get a change. And I was fired up that no one went and got the puck. And they said, well, we're not going to go get it. You're not supposed to dump it in. And it's, the game is turning into a puck possession game. And sure, there's times, and especially at the highest levels of the NHL, where you're winning at all costs, where you have to chip the puck in. You have to, live to fight another day kind of thing. But the game, especially at the youth level, we should promote skill. We should promote puck possession, because all those skills are necessary to play at the highest levels. And we can always teach chipping pucks and those kind of things. So I think we're seeing the European game have a big influence on North America. and we're seeing the size of a player doesn't matter as much anymore, and it's more about the skill and the speed and, you know, the hockey sense.
Awesome. I want to say hi to we had Jackson Barrett join us. We had Felina Davalos join us. Jordan Bertarami's watching. We had Ben Hampton. We got the Macias. We got a bunch of people watching. So guys, feel free to type in your questions. If you have any specific questions for Coach Paul about whether defensemen or playing at the next level. I think just to summarize for those who have joined us late too, it's the game has been is changing. Whether you're a defenseman or any position or forward, speed and skill is at an all-time high. Worrying about your size and things is less important than it used to be. When Paul and I were growing up playing, to be a defenseman under 6 foot was very challenging to get to the next level. Even if you had big stats and things like that, the game has changed. Players that can make plays, players that can skate, players that can play the offense become interchangeable. Like you're talking about, Paul, play offense and defense. And so for young players, thinking about how you approach your practices, challenging yourself to make plays, challenging yourself to work on your skating and your skills, and not falling into the doubters if you're told that you're not big enough or you're not good enough or whatever, and taking responsibility for what you can do about that with your work ethic. Paul, maybe just talk in some specifics now for defensemen. You've talked about their skating, you've talked about less skating backwards, making plays. Any real specific kind of skills or things to do? You talked about not throwing the puck away. Other stuff that you teach, the kind of finer details for defensemen that that the next level kind of looks for. And now you're talking about maybe a kid who's looking to go on to play junior hockey or college hockey. There's some details, right? It's not always the defenseman has the most points or whatever. There's some key things that defensemen can do that people are looking at.
Yeah, I think you revert back to what I talked about previously a little bit, is if you have to be competitive and you have to understand the game. So how do you understand the game? Well, if you're a 14, 15-year-old, even younger, and you're not watching hockey, start now, because you can learn a lot from watching hockey. And the players that are smart and have hockey sense are going to be the players that play at the next level. So I think some of the little things is that just that awareness, right? As a defenseman, wearing, if you're talking about offensive zone awareness, right? Knowing when to pinch, knowing when not to pinch, knowing when to back off and play a 3-on-2 or a 2-on-2 instead of getting caught. Offensively, when you're looking to jump in the rush, being aware of how you beat your forechecker up the ice. How do I make this an odd man rush? Okay, what's in front of me? What's behind me? So if I'm going in my defensive zone, I'm going back to the puck. Am I going back and just turning and going to skate as fast as I can? Or am I going back a couple of quick strides, checking my shoulder, and then getting the puck and turning it up with speed? Am I communicating with my defense partner? This is something that we all need to improve on, is communication. It's amazing how two experienced defensemen that have played together can really control a hockey game. If you remember when the Ducks won the cup, they had Scott Niedermayer and Chris Pronger, and they played every other shift. So they played the whole game. One of those guys is on the ice, and they were two of the best defensemen in the league at that time, right? And that's one of the reasons why they won the cup, besides the goaltending. But you need to be super, super aware. So when you're going back to that puck, checking your shoulder, communicating with your defense partner, get your feet moving, and then things will happen, right? You're going to get to a point when you're not thinking anymore. You're just playing, and it's natural, right? It's been developed through practice and games played. And I think if you can do that, there's all sorts of little tips, right? Stick position, keeping guys to the outside, angling, not going straight at guys, because the guy's going to walk around you. How you take away their ice, how do you take away their time and space? So I think there's lots of things that you're looking at a defenseman. There's all these skills, and you can practice all those, right? Every time you're playing a one-on-one. Okay, how am I lined up in this one-on-one? Am I taking away the middle of the ice? Am I giving him the outside? Where's my stick? Am I taking away the middle of the ice? Am I steering him and directing him to the outside where I want him to go? Or am I overcommitting? How many crossovers am I doing? Am I doing too many crossovers where it's going to put me out of the play? Am I doing crossovers, and am I doing some C cuts that keep me in a straight line? So these are all little details that will pay off. And you know, when I'm giving lessons to guys, I see right away, one of the things I see a lot with kids is, if we're talking offensively, kids really overhandle the puck, right? When I talk about don't throw the puck away, we want to have the puck. Our team wants to have the puck, but we don't need to stick handle, right? There, a lot of times we're used to doing some of the drills that create a lot of stick handling. And the idea is, like, we want to be able to handle the puck at speed and be able to see the play, right? So a lot of things I talk about with the kids is being able to make plays with our head up, and that's a really important skill.
And when you're stick handling, it's hard to, actually having the puck ready and loaded to pass or to move it rather than over handling it all the time, right? And we have a question I want to get to in a second here. Kathleen Reyes came in here. But I think also, Paul, you make a really good point about what a defenseman actually is. I think sometimes for younger players, for example, maybe coach puts them on defense or something and they think, oh, I got to play defense. I got to just stay back. And that's what they put the slower players or something like that. And not at all, right? A defenseman can actually control the game. It's almost like the quarterback or the point guard. They can have a major impact. They can be the first one back, but they can also lead the rush. They can control the puck and kind of control the pace of the game. They can do so much to impact the game, and taking that responsibility on. And we've talked about this too when we were younger players. A lot of times you volunteer to play defense because sometimes there's less defense too, more ice time because maybe there's only 4 or 5 D instead of 3 lines of forwards. You get a chance to impact the game even more, because it doesn't mean you can't play offense and be up in the rush too.
That's why I became a that's why I became a defenseman. Initially, my dad put me at D because they needed defensemen on the team, and there was less defensemen, so I got to play more. I got to play every other shift on several of the teams because no one wanted to play defense. So really highly recommend kids to want to play defense, and that's why it's important to play multiple positions, right?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, the question from Kat is, how important is it to you as coaches to have a player who's coachable and eager to learn about the game?
Yeah, that's paramount, right? I think that having that growth mindset and wanting to be better and taking feedback, I think that's important. And sometimes you learn that the hard way as a player, right? You really have to understand that the coach is there to help you, and if you're not willing to take feedback and siphon that feedback, right, and filter it, it doesn't always mean that every coach you're going to have is a great coach. I'll tell you right now, when I grew up playing youth hockey, I didn't have every coach wasn't a great coach, but if you can filter the information and be receptive, right? Can you look them in the eye when they're talking to you? Can you nod your head? Or are you down with your head down and not listening, right? Just some of those little cues are really important. So showing that you're receptive to feedback, and then filtering in what you think is applicable to your game and maybe is not applicable, and trying to implement that is a really critical part of development, right? If you're not open to learning in anything you do, you're not gonna evolve.
Yeah, right. I think that whole mindset affects everything, right? It's very hard to become elite or great at anything on your own. Like no one just knows everything they need to know or is as good as they need to be to get to the next level. Anytime you want to get to the next level, you're going to have to get better and learn something new. And if you're not actually seeking out that feedback and wanting to learn and things like that, it could be real tough for you. And I think, Paul, you've also mentioned, you've talked about, I think from your dad and other college coaches and things that you've talked to, is that when they go to watch games, they don't just watch plays the players make, and they're watch, like especially college coaches, that they're bringing someone into their program for 4 years and they're building a culture. They're watching how that player, right, responds to the coach and their teammates and things. Maybe just share a little bit about that, because I think that's an important thing that people watch.
Yeah, I'll tell you the story actually. So when I was coaching junior A hockey, our academic advisor would, during the games, I'd be coaching the team, and the academic advisor would sit with several college coaches, and then we would talk to the college coaches before and after the game with different players. And Tom, the academic advisor, was talking to one of the college coaches and was asking him, kind of what he's doing. And he goes, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, you're not watching the game. So he's, and he was wondering what was going on. You drive all this way, you fly all this way, and you're not even watching the game. And, the college coach said, well, I know who the best players are. And I've watched all these guys before, and I know who they are. And said, well, what are you looking at then? He said, I'm looking at the bench. He said, well, what do you mean? Like watching, what are you watching? He said, well, I know I've seen the players play. you know, and I still watch that and I'm seeing what they're doing. But really what I'm watching now is I'm focused on, you know, player X, and I've seen his skill sets, but how does he interact with his teammates? How does he interact with the trainers? How does he interact with the fans even during game? How does he interact with his coaching staff? So he was watching the player on the bench, his attitude, his demeanor, his body language. And so it was real interesting. And that's a huge thing, is that body language thing. And then that a lot of that connects with mindset, right? So when someone gives you feedback, how do you handle that feedback, right? Do you have positive body language, or you have negative body language? And it also connects with mistakes. When I make a mistake, how do I handle that mistake? Do I put my head down and sulk and, you know, go sit on the bench with my head down at the back of the line, or does that fire me up and challenge me more, right? So those are critical parts of playing at the higher levels and the next levels, and those things are practiced. You know, they're not born. You have to learn these things. And I think that's what sometimes the misconception is, that, you know, these top NHL players or even players that play college or pro are just born that way. Oh, they're just good. And that's just not true. They're built, right? These skills are built. The on-ice skills and off-ice skills are built through trial and error and practice and repetition.
That's a great point, Paul. I know we have to wrap up here. You got to call up USA Hockey actually coming up in a little bit. But I think just to summarize, that's the great ending point, in that players that play at the highest level are not just only naturally great players, and only naturally, even the stuff we're talking about doesn't mean they didn't have challenges when they were younger, or have moments where they made mistakes, or didn't take feedback well, or lost their cool, or things like that. Kids especially, but everyone goes through these challenges. That's the great thing about hockey and sports is learning to go through that adversity, going through those tough times when things aren't fair, when the referee makes a call, it's not a fair thing, when your teammate does something not right, when your coach doesn't believe in you in the position you think you're believed in, or whatever. But it's these things are practiced, right? They're habits, right? And it's not just gonna, when I get to college hockey or pro hockey, then I'll be a good teammate, then I'll be a leader, then I'll work harder, then I'll whatever. It starts now, and it's not just in the games, right? It's in the practice, it's in the dry land, it's in the home workout. It's, am I going to take feedback? Am I going to be a leader? Am I going to work as hard as I possibly can every opportunity that I have? And then am I going to practice these little habits, even the stuff that people may not notice? You talked about stick position. You talked about angling. You've talked about all these things that you can work on in your practices that may not even be noticed, or you may not get recognition for. But if you're committed to playing at that next level, these are the things, and creating those habits right now that don't get seen right now, but that will pay off down the road, because it's hard to change your habits when you're 18 or 19. If you haven't done anything like that your whole career.
Yeah, if you look at it as everything is an opportunity, right? Like, we know what we're going through right now as a community, and, you know, are you going to make gains? Or are you going to fall behind, right? So if you look at every chance as an opportunity to improve, and have that, you have that goal set of what you want to do, and it's a long path ahead of you, right? And there's going to be ups and downs, and the people that stick with it and put in the work, put in the time, have an opportunity to play at the next level. And that's still not guaranteed, right? So that's the thing. It's a unique thing, but if you have that drive and that passion, the love for the game, this sport can be it's been a lifetime for me. And I think whether you play college professional hockey, or youth hockey and get into coaching kids, or end up playing in adult leagues, it's a great game that can be shared with your loved ones and the world, and that's something that that's priceless.
Awesome, Paul. Thanks. And then final takeaway, we kind of mentioned it there, is another takeaway is, if you love the game, don't quit. If you love the game, you don't know, like, hockey's a late development sport. So Paul's cut at midget AAA because the coach wants size, and he ends up going on, and you stay with it instead of quitting, and you commit to practicing for a year without even a chance to play games. You get cut from a team with all your friends are on, and you keep going, and you end up being the one to play college hockey and pro hockey and have a career in hockey, where a lot of the guys on that team who made that team, probably didn't play hockey beyond another couple of years, So hockey's a late development sport. We talk about being at your peak at 26 years of age. So even if you get cut from a AAA team at 17, at 18, you don't make a junior team at 19. If you love the game, There's no one, it's your decision and your journey to follow it. And if you have work on the habits and keep becoming and stick with it longer than the others and try to become the best of your potential, I think regardless where you end up, we share this, Paul, that we've dreamed of becoming playing in the NHL. And neither of us ended up having a career in the NHL. Tomas, was drafted in the NHL, didn't have a career in the NHL where we, made millions of dollars or something like that, but that we wouldn't trade our experience in chasing those dreams and the opportunities that led to, whether it's collegiate hockey, relationships, jobs in the future, experiences, playing at different places. We wouldn't trade for the world, right? So don't, young players, don't give up. You don't make the AAA team, you make the AA team, or you don't make this club or whatever. If you love it, as long as you love it, stick with it and keep working on those habits and take responsibility over your own future.
Awesome, Ben. Yeah, appreciate it. And thanks for the time today. And yeah, every time you get a chance, let's try to get better. And that's the key. If you can do that and moving forward, that's where you're trying to go with it, right?
Great. And then we had some late joiners. We got Russ Hennings and Nick Flores and stuff on. So guys, if you're watching this live now or on the replay, if you have questions for Paul or myself, whether it's on becoming a defenseman or playing at the next level, type them in. We can either address them right there or set up some lives in the future and some topics that you might want to see in the future. We have a bunch more of these planned. We have a lot more to share, and we look forward to sharing that stuff with you guys. And if you find this valuable, share it, like it, so we can spread the message to others around that can help any young players or parents out there with what we're sharing today. Thanks so much, Paul. And I know we'll get you back on another live here soon on other topics.
Sounds good, Ben. Be safe, be healthy, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Bye.